Good evening. Welcome. My name is Eric Patterson. I serve as President and CEO of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation and Museum in Washington, D.C. Excuse me. And for those of you who are joining us this evening live, and for those of you who watch this webinar down the road, thank you for taking the time to join us and to learn a little bit about our curricular products and how we believe that they can be of use to you in the classroom. I'm going to share my screen. And again, I'm Eric Patterson with the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation in Washington, D.C. And this is a high school educators webinar that's actually going to focus our attention on the fourth edition of our high school curriculum. But before we get there, allow me to say a few words about what we're going to be doing tonight. I'll tell you just a little bit about the foundation and our museum. I'll tell you a little bit about some exciting new curriculum products that are coming down the pike just in the next couple of months. I'll show you some of the things that are available to you freely online, as well as how they match up with our hard copy fourth edition of the high school curriculum. And that is what you see there: communism, its ideology, its history, and its legacy. I'll show you, I'll open up one of those lessons tonight to show you how it integrates with video, how it integrates with national standards, for instance, on teaching how the Second World War started, the student activities, kind of where all those elements are. So it can be a drop-in to a module that you're already teaching. We'll stop multiple times for Q&A or comments, and then we'll end with some additional resources that are available to you and to your students. Well, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation was founded by an act of Congress in 1993. It was just after the end of the Cold War. What happened, and we were set up by an act of Congress, signed into law by Bill Clinton. And the basic idea was this: that someone should be the organization to commemorate the 100 million people murdered in the 20th century, to tell an accurate history about the evils of Marxism as an ideology and in practice. And then second, to be a witness or to be an advocate for people still held in communist tyranny today. We do this based in Washington, D.C., but we also have teachers and affiliates and researchers across the country. Let me tell you that we have basically three lines of effort of how we accomplish this mission. They're policy relevant research, our museum and its operations, and then our curriculum, teacher training, and student programs. So first, as you see on the left side of your screen, we have a museum here in Washington, D.C. that opened just 2.5 years ago. It's part art museum, it's part history museum, it's part classroom, but most importantly, it is a schoolhouse. It is a place for students and for families and for educators to come and to receive an accurate history of the ideas of communism, about the fight for freedom that happened in so many places, whether at Tiananmen Square in 1989, or in the Baltic countries, or Poland, fall of Soviet communism, etc. We feature all of that here at the museum. Second, we have a policy team that works on China and Cuba and North Korea and other contemporary challenges. The individual you see in the middle is Dr. Adrian Zenz. Adrian is the leading researcher on the Uyghur genocide in China. I'm proud to say that our policy research is often cited by the press. It is cited by the US Congress or by the UN. And we're very proud because last year, our peer-reviewed research presented first through the BBC and then elsewhere helped force Volkswagen and another European company pull out of factories that were using slave labor in China. And then third, and really the focus of our evening tonight, is the work that we do with students and educators, such as our many curricular resources, both in print and digital, our speakers bureau, our teachers training online and face-to-face, and many, many related programs. So this simple slide gives you just a little bit of a sample of some of the additional resources that are available. What you see on the left is a student group who is here for a national security conference. That's on the front steps of our museum at the McPherson Square Metro stop in Washington, D.C. That first line, the Witness Project, I'm going to actually show you a couple of those. These are testimonials, video testimonies of survivors, witnesses of communism. We have a set of college programs, including internships. Of course, we have the museum and its exhibitions, the research, and of course, a wide array of curriculum, books, and resources. Let me just note that we do have a Amazon bookshop. It's amazon.com/shop// victims of communism. And that will take you to a set of over 50 curated books, all the way down to elementary school up through deep research on the issues of Marxism, socialism, communism. Well, tonight, what we're really talking about are curricular tools that are designed for educators. And what I'd like to do is give you a teaser about a couple of things that are coming that'll be available to you between now and July 1st. The first is this: 10 great speeches against communism. We wanted to create a resource that the Lexile level for the introductory material is at the 8th grade level, but of course the speeches are at a more advanced level. And this is a tool not just for the high school civics or American history or world history class, that could be used in a speech course. It could be used in an English or communications course, literally right up through the college level. What you have is you have the speech, you have a short 500-word introduction to the speech, and then at the end of the speech are 3 to 5 discussion questions and an essay prompt. It's a fascinating little book to read. And if you'll notice, we have British and Americans. We have religious leaders and political leaders. And we have dissidents, and we have people from 5 different countries represented in these 10 speeches. It's a great resource, and you could also show a video in the classroom from YouTube, for instance, of Martin Luther King Jr. giving a speech, and then read the speech, and then do the unit around that. That is in final production, and we should have the first copies of that by April 1st of this year. A second resource for educators is this book, Communism and Its Crimes. And what this book offers is 4 introductory lessons kind of on the foundations of communism and socialism and Marxism in the 20th century. So what are the ideas? Who was Marx? What did he say? Communist Manifesto. Who was Lenin? This kind of state Marxism and revolutionary violence. How it was consolidated under Stalin. And then what we provide are a set of fiction books. There's a book study. So if your class is going to read Animal Farm, you could read about Stalin, and then you could read the book study on Animal Farm and use it as a study guide in the classroom. Or if you're studying China and you wanted to read Red Scarf Girl, which is appropriate for a much younger audience than Animal Farm, you could read Red Scarf Girl. There's a book study right there that'll lead the teacher through the discussions and things. And the same for the Stone Goddess, the Red Umbrella, etc. There's an appendix of key terms at the end of this, and there are quizzes and questions and an answer key for that for the instructor to use. This product is in production right now. It's totally written. We're adding some maps and diagrams and some modest things to it. It'll be available by June 1st. A third resource that's in development right now that'll be available by midsummer is the tool Learning Liberty Through Freedom Movements. People often ask me, communism, totalitarianism, the Soviet Union, the Cultural Revolution in China, these seem like such horrific things. It doesn't seem age appropriate to talk to children about these things. What this tool does is it focuses on freedom movements. And so the focus is clearly there's oppression, but we don't get into more of the details of what that oppression looks like. Instead, what we focus on are the liberty movements in a variety of countries that were successful in keeping hope alive and actually changing the country. And what you see on the screen is what's called the Baltic Way. And this is at the end of the Cold War, that the men, women, and children of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, more than a third of their total populations, stood and held hands literally across their 3 countries as a statement against communism. And so that and other things are the cases in this book. It's a wonderful book for a much younger type of classroom situation. It's written at the 4th grade Lexile level, so it's much more easy to use at that level. That tool We have the draft of it done. It'll be available by the end of summer of this year. Well, what I've shown you thus far are three tools that are in development that'll be on our Amazon Bookshop page over the next few months. They will be available at conferences, starting with the Heave Conference in Virginia in just a few months. But I want to show you some tools that are available to teachers right now. The first one is our online history curriculum. These are chapters. This is in a sense, if you might say, Communismpedia or Marxismopedia. This is a history about where did communism come from, the tools of communism, communism and its intersection with religion, belief, and conscience, the founders of communist thought, Marx, Vladimir Lenin, Stalin, etc. There's resources on China and things. These are, in a sense, book chapters. They're 3,500 words to 5,000 words in length. Any of your students, for instance, a high school student who's doing a term paper or major research paper, say on Lenin, or how World War I ended, or understanding how World War II began, can go to this. It's freely available on our website and read material that was prepared by high school teachers and then edited by college professors who are experts in the field. It is an outstanding free resource. And if you've seen the news recently that the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives passed in December, and it's back on the floor again, what's called the Crucial Communism Teaching Act, that calls on us on VOC to provide resources to the public. This is one of those resources that's absolutely freely available, paid for by grant funds and by donors, and available to you, to your students. And by the way, this is great background material just for a teacher or a professor who's going to make a short presentation to their students. All the things you need right there. Now, what I'd like to do in a moment is talk to you a little bit about this fourth edition high school curriculum, this hard copy curriculum that I have right here, and show you how it integrates, but with lesson planning, with classroom activities, with games, with video content. But I'm going to pause. I think you've heard enough of me talking for just a moment. And let me pause and open it up. Ashley's going to help me to see if there's any questions that I can answer at this point before we come back to the high school curriculum.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson. And as he mentioned, please feel free to share your questions at the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. You can share your questions there and I will ask them live. We've already received one question, which I did answer in the Q&A box, which is, could you repeat the Amazon shopping cart URL? So that URL is listed in the Q&A box. It is amazon.com/shop/victims of communism. So Dr. Patterson, could you share for everyone, I know you shared that the fourth edition curriculum is available at that link, but could you tell everyone a little bit about those resources that will become available? I know you shared the timeline, but if you could just remind everyone of that timeline and where they can find those once they are released.
Sure thing. So those three products that I showed you, the speeches of communism and the book studies and things, all of those will be available at our Amazon bookshop for purchase. And again, that's the www.amazon.com/shop/victims of communism. So all of those will be right there. The online curriculum, which is in essence the equivalent of a short book on communism, each chapter 3,500 to 5,000 words. Those materials are freely available on our VOC website, which is victimsofcommunism.org. And there's a couple of ways you can get there, but if you literally type in curriculum, Victims of Communism Foundation, it pops up right away on Google and other search engines. And we'll send out to you a set of links at the end of this presentation, as well as a classroom use little PDF that you can use that I'll show you in just a bit.
Thank you very much. One other question, I would love for you to share a little bit about how we found students learn best. So can you talk a bit about how we've combined printed resources, digital, and how we've combined those together to make them available to teachers and easily accessible and adaptable for their classrooms.
Thanks. And in a moment, I will actually show you some of those links and some of those elements that are there for you. Let me start by saying, long ago, I was a public high school teacher. My degree was actually in music education. Perhaps the best job and easily the hardest job that I ever had was teaching at my alma mater, at Public High School North San Diego. And I'm very, very grateful for those times. And so for you educators, I have a little sense. I well remember just how hard it was, whether it was faculty grading, um, uh, the time when you call a parent and you say, "Hey, I'm worried about your child," and they don't accept the information, the ups and downs that you sometimes have with students, but also all the highs. The student who makes it into college, they're the first one in their family. The student who started off really bad at the beginning of the year, and you help them, and they're successful. The thrill of seeing a student who struggles to learn or to master something, they have the breakthrough. Or those magical, they're kind of Robin Williams moments, if you will, those magical moments when a kid falls in love with a poem. Kid falls in love with a math theorem. They see it as beautiful. The time where the kid finally has one thing that they excel at. But all of that stuff, um, the highs were higher teaching high school. I did teach at the community college level and then at the university level. And interestingly, teaching U.S. government and history at all of those levels, it was the same textbook. The same textbook, the advanced textbook that was used at the in AP courses, for instance, at my high school was the same textbook that my mom, when she went back to college, was using in her college courses online. It was the same college textbook I taught at three community colleges, and it was the same textbook used in the classroom for first years at UC Santa Barbara. So there, I have a sense of different types of audiences, but all trying to interact. That age group of between, say, 14 and 20, interacting with history, world events, current events, etc. I also realize we live in a time where more and more of them are distracted, where there's an expectation of more interactive learning, maybe less like this video that I'm doing right now where I'm speaking to you. And third, of course, they're all using these devices, right? And so we're very happy at VOC when when the phones are out of the classroom, but we also realize that short video, interactive, things that they can do at home, gamification, all of those things are very, very important. And we'll show you some very easy to use, not super sophisticated, but very high quality ways to add to what you're already doing in the classroom. And let me just end this little monologue by saying on this point, we don't think that we can teach you how to teach 10 times better in the classroom. And we're not trying to overload you with a bunch of content. We know how much you already are trying to teach. We know that when I graduated from high school 30 years ago, we stopped teaching about the world at 1989, 1990. And now that regular history teacher has all of the 90s and 9/11 and everything else to teach about, right? We understand the complexity, especially in the social sciences and in the humanities. So what we've tried to do is prepare some resources that very quickly you can just drop in and enrich what you're already teaching. And so with that, I'm going to go to the fourth edition of the curriculum and just show you some of the elements of it, and then open it up back for Q&A. Now, what we have on my screen here is, and I'm going to scroll through, but it is the exact thing as this hard copy right here. I have it as a PDF to make it very easy to scroll through on the screen. So here's that cover, Communism, Its Ideology, Its History, and Its Legacy, originally written by our founder, Lee Edwards, who's a professor at Catholic University of America, and Paul Kengor of Grove City College. And then they were assisted with a high school educator in getting the Lexile level down to the eighth grade level for most of the lessons. And as you enter the book, what you'll see is this table of contents. Just to give you a sense of what's here: Marx, Lenin, Stalin, independence and occupation of the Baltics, China, Kim Il Sung. And we do have a focus on these leaders, the cult of personality, and we do have a focus on specific countries, and that's intentional. It's so that we show Latin America and Asia and Europe and the United States, not just Europe. It's also designed, this entire curriculum is tied to the national standards for the National Council for History in the schools. And so what you'll find is you'll see and that's very standard. It's very much like many of the states. Uh, it's a very standard level of standards. So you'll see that in every lesson. Let me give you a little sense as you go into the text. There's kind of a freshman and college level primer for you, for the educator, why we wrote the book, and then what to look for in here. This primer for educators talks about who these very important, terrible dictators were. It defines the idea of what a totalitarian government is. It provides just a very quick background on it's kind of a framing of the book, and then it defines key terms. And I think that this is, of course, extremely important, getting our terminology right with students. What is democracy? What is Marxism? What do we mean by socialism? What do we mean by communism? What do we mean by capitalism? These are right there for you in the introductory elements as you answer questions to students or teach. And then it goes right into a chapter. Here's the first chapter of the book. It's about Karl Marx. There's an overview. There's a set of objectives, learning objectives for the student. We tie it to what the national standards are on this area. And then there's a set of materials that are right here for you. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip ahead because a standard that almost every both American history and world history class has is a standard around something like, what were the causes of the Second World War? And so what I'd like to show you is, and it ties to an event that we had here at the museum this week, what I'd like to show you is one of the ways that you can add content, add an interesting story, tie to what's happening in an English classroom, for instance. And that's with a focus on the events that happened in August of 1939 that led to World War II. So I'm going to flip ahead to page 58, which is really 53. So this chapter, Independence, Occupation, and Deportation in the Baltics, I'm going to use to kind of show you the suite of materials that's available. Now, the reason that this is important is because what this set of mini chapters does is it talks about the summer of 1939. Most standards talk about what was the immediate cause of World War II, and one of them, of course, was August 1939, the so-called Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, in which Germany and the Soviet Union, who had been enemies, make a secret pact that they won't fight each other. And what they'll do is they'll carve up Poland, and Russia will, of course, or the Soviet Union will take over 3 Baltic states, Finland, etc. So the Soviet Union is going to, without fighting, just roll in and take over Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And interestingly, and very sadly, over the next decade, the Soviet Union will deport 100,000 of these Baltic people. Just to give you a sense, that would be the equivalent today if a foreign power came into the United States and deported 6 million American citizens. And so what this chapter does is it allows us to talk about, first of all, the causes of the Second World War. It gives us a case study of one of these terrible ways that families were ripped apart, and then men were sent to the gulag, women were sent to farms. It gives a chance to talk about, if you want to, what was the basis for some of the human rights laws that happened after World War II, certainly the Holocaust, but also these types of deportations and things. And frankly, the story about what happened in the Baltics is non-controversial. We know that there are some communities where talking about Cuba is very contested. We have a Cuba chapter. We know that talking about the Vietnam War can be highly contested. I will tell you, people don't get into an argument about what happened in Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. And so I'm bringing it to your attention tonight is a chance to hit a lot of different notes and to meet some standards to tell part of the story that's not so well known and to add some human color. The other thing about the Baltics, many of you know this author, Ruta Sepetys. If you don't know her family, she's the child of immigrants from the Baltics, and she's written a number of books, the young adult reader level, that are absolutely gripping and fantastic. especially her two on Latvia and Lithuania. Uh, they're very, very moving books. Um, they're written at the high school level, and you get a real sense of the trauma and the tragedy that young people face. And so it would be a wonderful recommended side reading for you. So let me walk you through just a couple of things. What you'll see is essentially elements of a lesson plan right here. What you could send for homework the night before. You could send a short background essay, as you see here. You'll have them read a background essay. You could either have them on the Baltics or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. You see down below, there's a set of handouts that I'll show you. And then right here, primary source activity. There's a set of, we'll see in a moment, in this chapter, we have character cards so that you could do a classroom activity. There's a handout that they could take home. There's a worksheet for a class discussion about which type of people, like a landowner or a small businessman or a teacher, they're the ones who would be deported and why. You'll find here that there's also some student essays and things. So the way these are framed is that it tells you the elements right here. Here's an activity that you could choose to do. Here's a wrap-up discussion that you could do. You and your family are being deported. What would you take if you only had 10 minutes to pack? And then there's some opportunities for, if you wanted to expand it with a larger assessment, you could have them do a PowerPoint presentation. You could have them do a major report, etc. I want to show you right here, if you wanted to have a larger project with some online research or some library research, you could do that. We give you some suggestions about how to tie the past to the present. And then every chapter has this type of QR code right here. And what I want to do for you is show you where that QR code would take you. We'll get there in just a moment. Here's the type of reading that the students would have. If you wanted to assign them the 2 pages on the history in the Baltics, you can do that. And that's all there basically is. It's quite short. And then there's a set of discussion questions that you can use with the students. Or you could have them, and this ties to those national standards, talk about the causes of World War II, including the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This is very short, as you can see. It's just those 2 pages and a little bit more. And then here's the questions for a classroom discussion. Now, what I'd like to do is show you, if you were to use one of these and you hit that link, the QR code for additional resources, let me show you the types of resources that are immediately available. But first, I said that there were some activities. Here's the numbers of the deportations that happened. You can pass this out in the classroom or read it to the students. There's a story here. There's a background essay here about it. And let me show you what else is here. Because we have today from the archives the actual orders deporting people, we have reprinted that here for you and your students. And so this is the order right here. It tells the chiefs of operative branches what to do within 3 days to give an account of collecting these people and putting them on the trains. And look down here. Who is it? All former members of anti-Soviet political parties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the actual order. We've included it. You can copy it for your students, read it in the classroom. This is from the Deputy People's Commissar of Public Security of the USSR. This is the actual document. And so a great, great teaching tool. Either have the students read it in groups, have them take it home, have them respond to it, etc. Now, let me take you to those additional resources. I'm going to stop and then restart my screen. If you were to click on that link that I showed you a moment ago, it will take you to this page, Independence, Occupation, and Deportation in the Baltics. And here are the supplementary materials that we're constantly updating. There is a 4-minute YouTube video that's very, very good. If I was going to use anything, this is what I'd use if we're talking about it at the beginning, what started World War II. And it's a YouTube link right there. There's a set of other YouTube links right here about the Baltics, the Baltic Way, the commemorations, all of those types of things. How the Soviets took over the Baltics. That's a 20-minute documentary right there, and explains not just about the Baltics, but the way the Soviets were an aggressive power pushing what became what we know as the Cold War. So there's a set of links there. Second, This is what those videos look like. If you were to click on that first video, it takes you right to YouTube. This is very, very standard from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. It's a very high quality resource. The other resource that we have in the video realm is what we call the Witness Project for the Victims of Communism Museum. And it's literally victimsofcommunism.org programs Witness Project. We're going to send you this link. And what these are is we have interviewed people who are survivors of communism. This woman, Channy Lai, came from Cambodia. We still have her meet with students and tell the story of how her family survived the killing fields by eating bark and bugs. She owns a restaurant now in the Sacramento area. Boris Hoffman. Boris is his family's Jewish. They were in Lithuania, so they faced both the invasion of the Soviets and the Nazis. And if you know the story, the Soviets came back. He tells his story. The Hoffman interview is a super one to use when you're telling the story of the Baltics. And there's many, many more. Romania, Poland, Vietnam, over and over. If there's a topic that you're interested in, these are real people telling their stories. The point I'm making here is that what we've tried to do is give you a short reading that ties to national standards, that maybe ties to a fiction reading from outside of the class, like the Ruta Sepetys novel or something else, that ties to video content, the student activity, etc. It's all right there in the package for you, the educator. Some of the units have things like crossword puzzles. Some of the units have things such as role-playing exercises. There's a full suite of different types of things throughout the curriculum. Well, I'm going to pause right there and change this screen sharing and open up for questions about the content that I've talked about from our fourth edition of the curriculum.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson. We have received several questions so far, so I'll share the first one. One teacher says that they bought the book on our Amazon bookstore, but how could they get a copy in PDF format to make copies for their classes? So I'm sure you'll say the same answer as me, that we'd be happy to share that with them.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So for educators, for educators who purchased the book, and it's only $19.99. It's only a few dollars more than the actual printing cost, because most of it was paid with funds from donors who felt that this was very, very important. If you'll email to us at info@victimsofcommunism.org, we'll make that available to educators.
Thank you. Another question is there an effort to translate children's or young adult literature and poetry from former communist countries?
Yes, thank you for asking that. There are a number of books that are more at a child's level, such as Breaking Stalin's Nose, which is at the elementary level, or Red Scarf Girl. Advanced elementary can read it. So there are some things that are out there already at that level that are in English. Many of them are award winners. We have those books available on our website. The second question, though, about the translation of things, we have been more active in translating adult witness stories, and we've been more active in translating the kind of the biographical or the memoirs of people. We have not done a lot of translating books that are published primarily in foreign languages, say in Poland or Czechia, et cetera, into English. We've been primarily working with the English resources. And one reason for that is the English resources just have such wide appeal, because so many people in other countries can access them easily, and so many kids are learning English today. But I would ask you, if you have recommendations of things that we need to publish, send them our way and we'll look into it.
Thank you. One other question from a teacher is regarding the textbook that you were referencing earlier on in the presentation that you used at multiple schools, and they were asking what textbook that was.
Yeah, there are two textbooks back in the day that I used a lot. One was the Jandaberry Goldman, which I think is like in its, who knows what edition it's in. And the other one I think was called The American Experience, that old red kind of red covered book.
Thank you. Another question about convincing leadership in schools that these curricular materials should be used. So, how
Yeah.
do teachers convince their leadership that they should be using these materials?
This is always the hard one. What we've tried to do is just be very realistic. We're not trying to impose or even just entice a school district to necessarily take on to have to go through a curriculum committee process to own an entire large book. We know that those processes can be onerous. We hope that you'll do that. We hope that, but what we've tried to do is make it so that you could take one lesson or two lessons or three lessons and then drop them in to your existing classroom model as supplementary materials. We realize that that's probably the most realistic. Now, that being said, couple things. The first one is that we would be happy to do a seminar, a free webinar, or if appropriate, send someone to do a meeting or a training at your campus at no cost to your school. So if you think that that would be of use for your history department, for instance, or your social studies division, or humanities division, or for a school administration official, we'd be happy to do that. The places where we frankly found the most success are places where three or four chapters are taken and that they're used as co-curricular materials to help tell the story that supplements the existing black and white print of the existing textbook.
Thank you. One other question is related to student perception of communism. So, what I often hear by people in the United States is that communism itself isn't bad, just the people who implemented it in the past were bad people. So, any system implemented by a bad person is just due to the bad person. What would your response be to that student?
When I'm talking to students about this very important question, what I remind them is, and it comes in a couple of ways. One is, well, it was never really tried, or was it tried, or isn't it about equality? And so I really try to listen and maybe ask a clarifying question or two to the student, because this is a really great teachable moment. But I don't want to come slamming down when they're really interested in kind of social justice and equality. It's not capitalism or something. So the first is kind of listening. What are they talking about? And then what I say is, so if they're asking, what's the definition really of communism? Or is socialism good, communism's not, or something like that? Or is it just bad people? What I say is, well, do you know what Martin Luther King Jr. said about communism? And of course, most people don't realize he had a very strong set of statements on this. Well, let me tell you what Martin Luther King Jr. said, because I have found that this answers the question. By the way, here's the framework: bad ideas, bad practices, and statism. So Martin Luther King Jr. said that communism is a violation of Western values, of the Western civilization, of Judeo-Christian heritage of the United States and Western countries. Why? Because it's materialistic and it's secular. It thinks that you and I are just chemicals and atoms, nothing more, and that the only way to understand life, the universe, and everything, if you will, is it's just survival of the fittest. And King says, I believe, and most Americans believe, that there's at least a bit more to the story than just that. So it has bad ideas, and those bad ideas mean that evil people, like you said, if they think that human beings don't have inherent human dignity, don't have human rights, well, they're just tools to be used. King said the second thing: communism always is promoted and held in power by, these are his words, violence, lies, and murder. And every communist regime built walls around itself and then worked its own people to death and terrorized its own people. Violence, lies, and murder. So the practices of communism are always bad. And then third, every communist state, the elite ran it to perpetuate themselves in power. They created a state and had to have a perpetual keeping themselves in power. You can say that's because it's some bad people, but that's what happened. That's what's still happening in China. That's what happened in the Soviet Union, Cuba, all of these places. And in every place where there's a real election, that people choose human rights, democracy, and freedom. Now, I gave you a long answer, but the simple framework is bad ideas, bad practices, and they're always status crushing human freedom. That's how I would answer it.
Thank you very much. And just want to remind everyone, we still have a few more minutes. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to add those to the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And while we wait for any other final questions to come in, Dr. Patterson, if you would share a little bit, oh, and I believe you might be sharing your screen to show any others.
Yep.
Um, if you would go back one slide, it would be great to feature to the teachers the Mythbusters slide. I
Yeah.
know
Yep.
that has been a popular product that you mentioned already that we will be featuring at Heave and other conferences around the country, but just wanted to highlight that resource that we do have obviously our larger curricular materials, but that we do have, flyers like these, just a front back worksheet that can be passed out to students as well, and a really great resource for students of all ages.
Ashley, can you see my screen now
I can,
with,
yes,
with the
yes, and
misspell?
hopefully,
So we're going to send this resource to all of you, and it's deliberately designed to look like it just was a page kind of torn out of your notebook. That's the way we designed it. And it answers the types of questions that we just had. Capitalism is just as bad as communism, right? Communism has never been really tried, has it? So those myths, and then we give just a short answer. We've heard these many times from students. They usually are quite authentic in asking the questions. I've been asked things like, "Where's the Victims of Capitalism Museum, etc." And and we really listen to them and we really dialogue. I would say one of the biggest problems is that students don't understand first just how bad other people in so many places around the world have it. There's kind of a lack of gratitude that we have so many blessings in America. And I think that the second is they really do not have an understanding of of what we mean when we talk about democracy and free markets and fundamental human rights. Um, they really don't understand, for instance, the First Amendment to the Constitution and what a blessing and what a change in world history it is. So, if we could do anything, it's helping them understand some basic definitions about those things and engaging them in conversation about those things. Let me show you just a couple of other quick resources, then take any last questions. Um, the first one is that we're constantly looking for ways to put materials in front of teachers, to be there where teachers can interact with our hard copy resources, talk to our staff, also do training sessions. So if there's a venue that you think that this would be appropriate, if there's a regional conference, a county conference, a state conference you think we should be at, please send that information to us. We will also come in and do teacher trainings. We can do everything from 1 hour on a specific set of resources, like we just did, kind of an overview, to a half day, all the way to our 2.5 day, very intensive teacher training where teachers can get credit for that. For those types of things, we do much more training on the history, the economics, understanding communism, some of the literature, some of the arts elements, and we bring in some survivors of communism to interact with the teachers or the teaching fellows. And then you probably have some of your outstanding students who have gone away to college, and you stay in touch with them and they're looking for that summer internship. Our interns at the Victims of Communism Foundation, as you see here on the left, we bring in a cohort of 6 to 8 interns 3 times a year, fall, summer, and spring. They work right here at our headquarters at the Victims of Communism Museum. They go through a reading program. They sit on some events. They help out. They do museum operations types of things, everything from making coffee to helping to set up the chairs to meeting very distinguished people. And then they're also assigned within a department, whether it's communications or European studies or China studies, to assist that team. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, our interns helped run an event for the three foreign ministers of the Baltic countries of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. It was a private event. We had the New York Times and others here in the room, and our interns worked that event and had a very, very rich experience as well. Here's two of our current interns. Both these two guys are from Baylor University, and they're at a booth at a major human rights summit here in Washington, D.C., showing off some of our materials. Let me stop right there and open up for any final questions and answers.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson. And while we wait for any final questions, I did just want to share that we will host more of these webinars throughout the year. So please mark your calendars for our next webinar on that's today, June 17th at 7 p.m. We will have a witness of communism join us and share their story. So we really look forward to making that opportunity available to you all. And then also please mark your calendars for September 18th, where we will do an overview of our middle school curriculum and other middle school resources.
Ashley, let me pick up the just one more thing about the comment that's in the written questions about pushback. And one of the things that I do that I still do with college classes every time I meet with them, right at the beginning of the class, and and with high school students, it's the same way, is try to go around the room, try to get to know the students in the class. I'm a native Californian, so the classes I was in were very, very, very diverse. And now I live just outside of Washington, D.C., and Arlington, Virginia is just as diverse as LA. We have kids from all over the world, teenagers and young adults in the classroom from all over the world. And what I have found is one of the ways to not to, in a sense, to avoid pushback and to get buy-in is to find out where all the students are from. Because most people have a story, or their parents have a story, or their grandparents have a story, and it's a story of coming to America to get away from repression. It might be religious repression. It might be ethnic repression. It might just be economic opportunity. It might be because it's a very unsafe environment like El Salvador or somewhere like that. And so being able to get a fix on where they are, where their family's from, what that family church, and it may have been, oh no, my grandparents came here as 56ers from Hungary during the Hungary Revolution of 56, or my parents were Soviet, my great grandparents were Soviet Jews who came here during the 1920s. Tying this content to those things is one of the ways I think that's the most powerful of kind of getting around objections that you might have, at least in the classroom. And I think it's also true, though, because I think about community colleges. They're such a great service in our country. It's a low cost entry to education. I recommend it to almost everybody. They're a gem in a lot of ways. They're very, very diverse. And they say that what's important to them is it kind of levels the playing field for college education, and it emphasizes a lot of different forms of diversity. Well, that's the perfect place then to be talking about the hopes that people had in coming to the United States, but also what they were fleeing. And so, whether talking about social justice or injustice, talking about having to flee violence, the aftermath of war or the beginning of war, all of those things are pretty standard in a U.S. history class or a world history class or others. That's how I tie it in, and that's the way that I think we can kind of get at some objections that people might have. We emphasize we're nonpartisan at VOC. You see that we have board members and trustees and advisory council members who are kind of from all across the aisle. What unites us is a love of freedom, a love of justice, and a real and a very, very strong passion to not have other people suffer from communism.
Thank you very much. We have one final question that I'll pose to you that was just shared in the Q&A box. One attendee shares that they were shocked visiting college with their son and seeing pro-communist messages displayed in the library. What is the biggest misconception high school and college students have in their praise of communism?
Well, I'm going to kind of show how I really feel about this whole topic right here. By the way, let me just tell you, in the last several months, I've been to Taiwan, Poland twice, Ukraine, Romania, Lithuania, um, Germany. And I can tell you, in everywhere except for Germany, these people hate communism because they know it firsthand. They've just lived through it. Um, they know how bad it is, and they see a post-communist authoritarian state that's led by a KGB guy, that's Vladimir Putin in Russia. They see that same aggressive nature, this kind of legacy that's built into the power dynamics in Moscow. So they feel very, very strongly against it. And it's quite refreshing. You don't see these kind of symbols in a college library in Poland. Now, it is shocking that we have this stuff in the United States. Um, it's a symptom of it's a glorious thing that we can have free speech, and so that we can openly debate these ideas is the right thing to do. It is a big disappointment, though, and dangerous for us to glorify them, and for our universities and colleges in many places to kind of glorify these terrible ideas. And let me tell you why I think it is. The way that we used to teach American history, and I think that we still should, is it was this grasping towards increasing freedom and equality for men and women. Red and yellow, black and white, regardless, the old Sunday school song, they're all precious in His sight. That sense of human dignity for everybody. It was hard fought in America. It started in 1620 with the Mayflower Compact. We didn't have slavery in those northern states. We did have mistakes. We did have mistakes in the South. We had sins, we had errors, we had evil. We had to tell that story, but it's an amazing story of increasing freedom. Guys like George Washington freeing his own slaves and agonizing over how to do so. It's the story of the Civil War. It's the story of the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King Jr. All of that is not the way that history is being taught many places today. An alternate story that's only about oppression, that not just problematizes, but degrades kind of the American dream and all that it means. That second bad story is just not accurate to our history. And what it does is it removes a sense of confidence in American values and kind of this trajectory of history. That's a trajectory that has lots of scars and lots of warts, but it's headed generally in the direction of greater opportunity and freedom for everybody. So what I try to tell students is, you have a lot of blessings. So it's up to you to make a choice. You really ought, too many of you have some sort of weird guilt that it was all stolen and given to you. So you ought to feel guilty and then go on the warpath. In contrast, we have many blessings in this country. True. We ought to be grateful for them. It's true. We didn't earn them. Our grandparents fought World War II. Other people fought the Cold War. They gave us these blessings. So when you're thankful, it should motivate us towards service. It should motivate us to trying to help our fellow man, not tear down America. And that's the story that I tell. I try to emphasize to teenagers and to students and to my fellow teachers. And I do think that that's the way. We should be grateful. We have much to be grateful for. The evils of communism shine the light on the good in the West. It's imperfect, so we ought to tell the truth, but we ought to emphasize that those blessings should motivate us towards gratitude, and gratitude should motivate us towards service. And with that, I think what I should say, thank you for taking this evening with me. I know you had a long day. You may have come home and started grading. You may have gobbled down something right before you got onto this webinar. We're appreciative of your interest in the work that we do. Thank you very much.